You were in the building that night in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Jimmy Snuka against the magnificent Muraco, famous for the Superfly splash off of the top of the cage. Can you reminisce a little bit about that?
Yeah. I'd been watching, I think it was a year before, when Snuka took off from the top of the cage against Bob Backlund.
One of my earliest wrestling memories that I can remember.
I believe Randy Savage was doing elbows off the top of steel cages in the middle of nowhere, in Kentucky and Tennessee. I'm not saying all of Kentucky and Tennessee are in the middle of nowhere, but they were working a lot of small towns like everyone's proud to. I've worked hundreds of small towns. So I'd hear rumors that Savage would be dropping these amazing elbows. So it's possible that the best of Randy Savage was only seen by a few hundred people a night, which is crazy and shows you what kind of a, competitor. When I say competitor, I mean we compete with ourselves, with each other in the dressing room. But I didn't know that. I only knew that seeing Snuka leap off the top of the cage was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
So I had attended their first. Muraco and Snuka had this great build-up. And one of the things that was cool about it was that we never found out what Muraco said. He said something that set Snuka off, and then Snuka did a dive over the top rope, which people hadn't seen at that point. And he had this way of just shifting gears where he looked like he just lost his mind. Like, when he was enraged, he was a really dangerous guy, which may have had some, you didn't mess with Snuka, right? Bottom
That's
line.
a dark side episode.
Yeah. There's a story about police dogs coming, and there are various stories over the years of guys needing large numbers of law enforcement to settle them down. But when I just had this feeling like he's going to take flight, and so I talked about this. I wrote about it in the first book, Have a Nice Day, about how the plan was for my parents to drop us off at the bus station, and then they were going to go drive to Indiana to visit my brother in college. Me and my friend Scott Dara were going to just hang out. We were going to go down a little bank and hang out until everything was clear, and then we were going to go to Madison Square Garden the next night. And then Scott says, your parents are here. I was like, what do you mean my parents are here? And we look out, and my mom and dad were scoping out the area. When I asked them later, they said, you were just in way too big of a hurry for us to leave. And they suspected, they knew how important this match was to me. And so what I ended up doing is I got a little trepidatious. I took the bus back to Cortland, New York. And then that next day I was like, am I really going to let this set me back? Just because I had to take a bus back? No, I'm going back, to New York. I hitchhiked. I hitchhiked to Madison Square Garden. I think I got a bus ride about 100 miles. I can't remember if I got a bus ride 40 miles to Binghamton, whatever the case was. But it was a lot of hitchhiking. And because it was a solo ticket, I got a really good seat.
Oh, right.
Really good seat. And I was there when it took place. And the biggest.
And how old were you at this point, man?
I was 18.
Okay.
18.
Okay.
I was 18 years old. Scalped that ticket, was in the flannel, saw him do his thing. But the cool thing for me is that when he took flight, I was watching when he took flight, but as soon as he landed, I just spun around because I've always been interested in reactions, even more than the actions. And there's this amazing, have you seen The Green Mile?
Yeah.
Green Mile is the only movie that actually makes me cry. Not fight back tears, but actually cry. And the thing is, I know what they're doing to me, and they get me every time. It's that scene with Dell's mouse.
Oh,
remember that guy Percy stomps
on the mouse.
Little fellow's spine. He's dead.
Yeah.
And then John Coffey says, "Bring him to me, boss."
Yeah.
And it's really emotional. You see the little fellow's tail wriggling, but it's not until they cut to the reaction shot of David Morse, who's a great character actor, and he mouthed the words, "Jesus Christ."
Yeah.
And it's like the reaction to the miracle that's happening that gets me. So with that in mind, I turned around to look at the fans, and it was like this sense of community there. Like New York City, Madison Square Garden used to be a lot tougher place, as far as fans in general. You know, there wasn't families, and you know, there weren't many families at that time. And New York, you know, filled with tough people, and yet you had people crying and like strangers hugging each other. And I remember thinking like, wow, one day I'd like to make people feel the way that I feel right now. And that became like a career goal and a defining moment in my life.
Watch new episodes of No Contest Wrestling every Wednesday or listen wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us at No Contest Wrestling Podcast on Instagram.